Sarah's reputation was beginning to grow. A past client had referred a young couple who wanted to buy their first home in Queen Creek. They were excited, asking questions, and eager to start touring properties. As they sat down in Sarah's office, one of them smiled and said, "Can we go look at houses this afternoon?" Sarah remembered how she probably would have answered that question a few months earlier. Absolutely. Instead, she smiled and replied, "Before we start looking at homes, let's spend a few minutes talking about representation." The couple looked confused. "We thought that happened later." Sarah explained that Arizona real estate has changed. Before opening the first lockbox or scheduling the first showing, it's important for buyers to understand who represents them, what services will be provided, and what responsibilities exist between the licensee and the consumer. Later that afternoon, Sarah shared the conversation with David. "You handled that perfectly," he said. He reached for the Arizona Administrative Code. One of the foundations of ethical real estate practice is making sure consumers understand who represents whom. David explained that AAC R428-1101 requires Arizona licensees to protect their clients' lawful interests while dealing fairly with everyone involved in the transaction. Those responsibilities begin long before an offer is written. Agency isn't just paperwork, David explained. It's about trust. When consumers understand who is representing them, misunderstandings become much less likely. Imagine you're holding an open house in Gilbert. A visitor walks in and begins sharing personal financial information, believing you're automatically representing them because you're a licensed real estate agent. They tell you how much they're willing to spend, and even mention they're willing to pay more than the asking price if necessary. What would you do? Here's where many agents get into trouble. If consumers misunderstand your role, they may unintentionally share confidential information that could affect their negotiating position. Experienced realtors know it's important to explain agency relationships before those conversations happen. David reminded Sarah that the Realtor Code of Ethics supports these same principles. Article 1 requires realtors to protect and promote the interests of their clients while treating all parties honestly. Before that can happen, consumers should clearly understand whether they're a client receiving representation or a customer receiving limited services. He continued, "Consumers should never have to guess who you're representing. Transparency builds confidence. It also prevents complaints." Sarah thought back to a recent transaction. During an open house, she had politely explained that she represented the seller and encouraged an interested buyer to seek their own representation if they wanted someone advocating solely for their interests. The buyer appreciated the explanation. A week later, they contacted Sarah again and asked her to represent them on another property. "That's what professionalism looks like," David said. "People appreciate honesty." Experienced brokers know that many agency disputes don't begin because someone intentionally violated the law. They begin because expectations were never clearly explained. That's why successful Arizona licensees take time to discuss agency relationships early, answer questions honestly, document important conversations, and ensure consumers understand who is representing whom throughout the transaction. The best transactions begin with clear expectations, open communication, and professional representation. Those simple habits protect consumers while building trust that often lasts well beyond closing. As we continue through this chapter, we'll look at another area where ethical decision-making plays a critical role: proper disclosure of material facts and the importance of honest communication throughout every Arizona real estate transaction. Online discussion. 1. Why is it important to explain agency relationships before showing property? Answer. Explaining agency relationships helps consumers understand who represents their interests and what duties the licensee owes them. Clear communication reduces confusion, protects confidential information, and helps prevent disputes later in the transaction. 2. Imagine a buyer at your open house begins sharing confidential financial information before you have discussed representation. How should you respond? Answer. A professional licensee should politely explain who they currently represent and discuss the available agency options before allowing the conversation to continue. This helps the consumer understand the relationship and prevents the accidental disclosure of confidential information. 3. Why do many agency-related complaints arise even when no one intended to violate the law? Answer. Many complaints result from poor communication rather than intentional misconduct. Consumers may misunderstand who represents them or what services they are receiving. Explaining agency relationships early and documenting those conversations helps avoid misunderstandings and protects everyone involved.